Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. Our goal with this show and company is to introduce you to real people and the challenges they have faced in their lives in order to share their experiences and their ideas with you. We believe that storytelling is an amazing way to aspire and uplift the human spirit from any darkness you might be experiencing in your life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. If you are new to this podcast, make sure you follow, like, subscribe, and share. Let's jump right in. Hello, hello, and I want to thank you, those of you that are listening now live and those of you that are listening on the replay. We appreciate the audience here that we are slowly growing on the Her Version podcast. If you are listening to this podcast and you do feel as if this will resonate with somebody that you know, please share. We appreciate the shares. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling, as you know, and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I am speaking with an amazing woman named, oh my gosh, I forgot to ask how to pronounce your name. Is it Jothi or Jothi?
Jothi Dugar.
Jothi Dugar. Jothi is here today to talk about female traditions, the culture of marriage, and how she has healed from a lifetime of limiting belief systems that were handed down from generations of Indian origin. Jothi is an author and an expert in complete lifestyle changes. She is here to inspire us to break free from any lifelong barriers that are holding us back from our ultimate joy and happiness. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here today, and I hope this topic really resonates with many of you out there. I know.
Yes, yes. Listen, I know that you are super busy and you've got a ton of things on your plate between mom and woman and career and job and all of those things that you have going on in your world. So I so appreciate you taking some time out of your day to sit with us, chat. And I'm actually really excited about this podcast because of the culture, the culture differences. There are similarities and then there are things that are just completely different. So I'm hoping that we can kind of dive into some of those things and you can kind of enlighten us on, things that Americans or people that aren't in that culture have no idea, no clue about. So I'm excited.
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Yes, yes, yes. So how's your week been?
It's it's been challenging, but I did brand myself as the chaos guru. So if anyone can ride the waves of chaos, it has to be me, right?
100%. It's funny. My fiance was actually just kind of telling me that the other day because I broke my leg back in October 2020. I snapped my leg in half, my right leg, and I just went in for surgery last Friday. Went back under, they slit my leg back open and took out all the hardware. So I'm like limping around again in a ton of pain and completely in the normal, like complaining. And my fiance was like, well, this is a great story to tell.
Don't you love it when they, turn it back on you? Aren't you supposed to be the expert? Like, yes.
And
I will read my own book and I will follow my own guidance.
Oh, that's great. I absolutely love it. We're always getting tested, people. We're always getting tested. And that's what I love about this platform is being able to come on here and share our stories and the things that we've learned from the things that we've gone through. So listen, I would love for you to kind of back up a little bit and share a little bit about who you are, your culture and some of the traditions that you grew up with.
Sure. So I'm Jothi Dugar. I was born as a South Indian person, but I came to the U.S. when I was one. So my parents came, they brought me over when I was one. So I was pretty much raised here in the U.S. as a as a westernized Indian young lady or young girl, and the the major influence in my life has been that my parents came here when I was one. So they also came with all the traditional beliefs and values and customs and traditions and conforming to all of those society systems from India back 30 years ago. And they brought all that with them here in the US, and they kind of never evolved or grew themselves past that, even though India is way past that now.
Wow.
And
Okay.
America has never really been like that. So growing up in a very traditional restrictive family, and also there was a lot of uh abuse as well, which we'll get into later on. But in the Indian culture, it's not considered abuse. It's just considered disciplining, or this is, well, hey, we're raising you to be a good child that's
Yeah.
going to conform to society pressure and cultural pressure and parental pressure, so that you can then conform to your husband. So that's kind of the mentality there that I grew up in. And I used to, when I used to do podcasts before, I used to say, hey, I became successful, and I broke the glass ceiling in pretty much everything that I've done in spite of my parents. I'm going to rephrase that moving forward, just based on all the therapy and healing that I've gone through, and say, well, part of it was in spite of them, but part of it was because of them. And the part of it that was because of them was because if I wasn't subjected to all of these challenges, I would say, then I wouldn't have really felt the need to kind of break out of my own cocoon and
Yeah.
really become that butterfly and realize that, hey, I need to figure out who I am outside of all of this. And be able to like your podcast, be able to speak my own truth, and be okay with it, even if it's going to ruffle feathers, and even if people are going to be in denial. I'm sure when you talk to when you talk to people that have been abused, and then you talk to the people that are the abusers, they're like, what are you talking about? Like, you've
Yep.
never been abused. You had a
Yep.
great relationship. And I struggled a lot with that. So I know we'll get into more of the details, but I feel like I was kind of brought here. I was actually brought to my parents for a reason. It's to kind of break those chains, and use the experiences that I had as a child, but also kind of become my own person, and have the strength to do that.
Exactly, exactly. And I appreciate the kind of, I don't want to say struggle, but I guess struggle that you're kind of having, even articulating what that is or what that means or what that looks like, because it is kind of strange saying, you know thank you for this happening to me, because it isn't nice, it isn't good, it isn't loving, and it does suck, but being able to kind of look back and from a healing point of view and say thank you is strange. It's strange to say, and it's strange even for people who aren't healed to hear that. Like, what does that even mean? How can you even say that? So I totally understand, the I guess I don't want to say frustration. I don't even know what word I'm looking for, but still trying to articulate what that means for us. So I get that. Can you talk to us about some of the strict mindsets that you grew up with, and how you now view a lot of what was taught or expected of you, as
Yeah.
abusive?
One aspect was I was the only child, so
I didn't know that.
that didn't really help. So yeah, so
Wow.
there's a lot of pressure, spotlights on you, everything's your fault. It rains today. Oh, it's your fault. There's bad weather. Like, okay.
No
So,
kidding.
um, so some of it was from an Indian culture standpoint, where especially South Indians, like they're known to be intellectual. There's a huge difference between or at least there was, between like North Indians, South Indians. Like North Indians are more the business oriented folks, usually, Dunkin' Donuts owners, and you know, the gas station, 7-Elevens. So they kind of go more into like business. Uh,
Okay.
South Indians are kind of more into like being teachers, like professors, philosophers, doctors, lawyers. Like they're very focused on, you have to get straight A's. You have to, like that's like your priority is to get, phenomenal grades, and then get in, be the valedictorian in, colleges,
Okay.
while doing all of these other things that colleges expected you to do, like activities and being the leader and all of these things. So I had a lot of that. I mean, I probably learned every sport there was.
Wow.
Like dance, music, violin, ice skating, gymnastics, pretty much everything. So because and I didn't mind that so much, because I was, it was actually time away from home, which is where I didn't want to be.
Good point.
So like, great, I could do all these activities, but you still have to kind of maintain that, 4.0 GPA, and you can only keep that up for so long because you're not getting any sleep.
Yeah.
Especially if you're actually good at the activities. I mean, if you're really bad at them, then but it's kind of like I was actually good at these things, so you kept going up like the next levels, so which means more time. Um, so I had a lot of that going on, and I used to be super scared of coming home with like a B in my report card. I
Wow.
mean, I would really, I mean, I would do anything. Like, I would go to the teacher and beg and plead, like, can I do something? Can I retake the exam? Can I take another exam? Can I do more homework? And they're like, you got a B. That's great. I'm like, no, you don't understand.
Wow.
And yeah, because that just means it's more trauma at home from, whatever mood my mom was going to be in. I did, like, okay, let's just take the path of least resistance. So I am going to try my best to get straight A's and keep up with all of these other things. So
Wow.
part of it was the intellectual pressure. A lot of it was also culture and society pressure, where you had to be the subdued, quiet, girl that doesn't talk back to her parents, that doesn't have a voice, that doesn't really look out for herself. She just kind of blindly follows whatever her parents say. Respect the elders regardless of their own behavior. It's
Yep.
kind of like they can say or do or act however they want, but you are a child and you're a girl, so therefore you must conform. And even if their actions don't match their words, it doesn't matter, right? Like
Yep.
like they said something, you better do it. And a lot of, and there was also they were also very religious, so it actually turned me against religion right from when I was a
Wow.
child. Not that I didn't believe, I was born as a Hindu, and not that I don't believe in Hinduism, but I didn't feel like, well, you guys are so religious and yet you're acting this way, so therefore your connection to religion must not really be working.
Absolutely.
And how can you go to the temple, but the entire way back and forth, you're cursing, you're, being abusive, like verbally and physically, and really, like, that's like, I just didn't get it. So I
Yeah.
actually became a lot more spiritual, even as a child. Like, I did believe that there was a higher power, whether it was God or universe, or I don't even know what to call it, because I knew that I didn't want to. I knew that I had to get out of the situation, and I will one day. Um, you know,
Wow. Wait, how old were you when you started kind of already like understanding this?
I think I was maybe like, when I think about it, I think I was less than 10. Um,
Wow.
so probably like around like fifth grade or so was when, like, okay, I don't want to die in the hands of my mom. I don't, I'm not, I love who I am or who I want to be. And I always had like that vision of what I wanted in life. So I never really, like, people ask me like, oh, did you have any suicidal thoughts? I'm like, honestly, that's the one thing that I don't think ever in my life I thought about doing, because I was like, why
Wow.
should I harm myself because of somebody else's, issues.
Good. Yeah.
And it took me a while to understand, like, as I went to friends' houses and I saw their parents and their moms, I realized, like, wow, this is not normal.
Yes.
There's something wrong with my situation over here and my parents. I mean, my dad was trying to help, but he was also being abused. So, he tried the best he could, but you know, long story short, like, they came to this country, and I don't think he wanted to lose me to the court system or to my mom, because he knows how, US is kind of, they'll mostly side with the mom, and
Yeah.
she was very good at kind of changing her personality around depending on the situation. So it'd be
Yeah.
very hard to prove. So I had to kind of do the best I could to kind of stick under the radar as much as I could, not call attention to myself. But when he talked about people that haven't healed, I felt like, as I moved past my childhood, and then I kind of got my own freedom, but then I got married and now I'm getting my freedom from that. I feel like, wow, like, I really haven't healed fully. And I feel like healing is like a process that you may heal up to a certain point and you feel like, okay, I'm good, like, these things don't affect me anymore, but then something else hits you, or there's a trigger, and then you realize, like, oh wow, like, okay, I really haven't healed fully. So then I think what I
Yeah.
found is, like, you got to take that next level up and be like, okay, you got to heal at other levels.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I love that you're talking so openly about the age in which you started to kind of comprehend this, because I think a lot of times parents don't realize how young children are, like, and they're actually smart and they actually have self-awareness. And we kind of view our children as, you know like, how much do you really remember from when you're a child? Not really that much, but we remember how we felt, you know. We might not
That's an
remember all of
excellent.
that, the ice cream, extravaganzas, or all the camping trips in great detail, but we remember how we felt.
And that's a
And
great point. I think I heard someone saying that once, where they said, people might never remember exactly what you said or what you did, but they remember how you made them feel.
yeah,
And that's going to either bridge the connection or it's going to break you apart, because if you're constantly making the other person feel bad, or feel abused, or just feel neglected, then they're not really going to have that connection with you. But you could
exactly.
be doing nothing and just kind of help that other person to feel good about themselves, and that's what they're going to remember. Oh, this person always makes me feel good about myself.
Exactly, exactly. And you being able to, and I can totally relate to that, you being able to go to other friends' houses and see the difference.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they were thinking I was kidding. I'm like, oh my
Yes.
gosh, like, like, my mom said I have to be home by 7, and it's now 7:05. Like, I'm too scared to go home. They're like, you're like 5 minutes late. Like, what's the big deal? I'm like, no, you don't understand.
Wow.
And they're like, what? So, and they're like, well, what is she gonna do? I'm like,
It's hard to explain even.
yeah. And they thought I was kidding. They're like, well, she's not gonna do that. I'm like, it's happened before, and I can guarantee it's gonna happen again. And they're
Wow.
like, wow. So, and I know, as a child being raised in this country, people have asked me, like, well, why didn't you call CPS? What did you tell a teacher? I'm like, yes, but what you don't understand is, you know, they're not just going to come and remove you and put you in a system. And who's to say, like, that system is going to be any better,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So they're going to come and interview, do a whole lot of interviews, and if a person is capable of changing their personality around depending on the situation, they're really never going to get to, like, the
Yeah.
bottom, the root. And then,
Yeah.
especially if you have another parent who's kind of, too scared,
Enabling it.
right, who's like enabling it, then it just becomes like, oh, this kid is just, she's just trying to cause trouble, or she, wants attention or something like that. And then you go back to the same situation, and it gets a
Yeah.
lot worse, because
Yeah.
now it's like you
Now
put
they're pissed.
yeah, so I'm like, yeah, that was not a good choice.
Wow.
Like, never do that again.
Yeah, and that's a real thing. That's a real thing that that children know, are scared of, fearful of, and definitely a flaw, a flaw in the system as far as even just therapy,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
And I think back then, um, it takes a lot of self actualization to realize you have an issue and and seek help
Yeah,
for yourself.
yeah,
It's very different when everyone else is telling you you have an issue and you feel like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. So you can't really get that person into therapy.
yeah,
And even if they go, they're not. They're just gonna lie, or they're just gonna sit there staring at the wall and like, I don't have anything to talk about. um,
exactly.
so, but it helped me as a child to understand. Okay, this is not normal. She has issues. I know what I want to do in life. I mean, one, get out of here.
Yes, yes.
So I never really, had like, I mean, I could say maybe I was depressed for a while, but then I kind of, I always, I was kind of forced to kind of process my feelings very quickly and get out of like a funky state because, first of all, I had a busy life. I had to do good in school. I had all of these activities, and I really relied heavily on the support of good friends, and I still do. And I really cherished and valued my friendships, and they were my family.
Yeah,
And that's really what kept me going. And it's still it's what's keeping me going. Like, I mean, I'm actually closer to, I think, some of my really good friends than I am with, you know, any of my family members. I mean,
yeah,
other than my kids.
yeah,
So I think it's good to establish that, if anyone is going through um, a challenging situation, especially if you can't really rely on immediate family, look at who your true friends are, and and see if you can seek some support through them.
exactly. Now it seems like you kind of came to, as you're calling it, self-realization fairly young. However, what were your views, as a younger female, as far as female traditions, and how do they kind of differ from, where you are now? Are there any differences, or did you kind of realize that that wasn't a thing for you fairly young? Like, were
Um, I
like were
think
there were there traditions that you were kind of holding on to in through college and
um, for me, I think everything that my parents try to force me to do, whether it's traditions or religion or values or even food, I associated all of that with my parents, and then I kind of grew a real sense of kind of hatred towards that.
wow.
Maybe I wouldn't call it hatred because it's a strong word. I would just I would maybe just say I was strongly opposed to any of that. Like South Indian food right now, I'm like, no, I hate South Indian food.
Wow.
Like wearing like traditional South Indian clothes, I'm like, oh no, I'm not gonna wear that. So, and and to them it was kind of like, oh, you keep like rebelling against like everything that we stand for. I'm like, well, I wouldn't call it rebelling, but I'm like, well, I was forced to do these things,
Mhm.
and I conformed for so long, and now I'm not going to conform anymore. Like, if I feel like doing it one day, I will do that, but I'm not going to be forced to, because it became kind of my parents using religion as a, oh, our religion says you must do this and you must do that. I'm like, really? I'm like, I don't think. Show me the book, and I was always kind of I became an electrical engineer through college, but I always had that kind of engineering mind. I'm like, really? Show me the book that says that. Like, why do we have to do it this way? Why do you have
Yeah.
to do that? And they're like, oh, just do it. I'm like, and I was never that type of person that I really resonated with. Like, you should do it because I told you to do it.
Yeah.
Because I think when you lose respect for your parent as a child because they're not acting in a respectful manner, everything that they tell you to do suddenly becomes a, oh, well, why should I do that? Because they obviously don't have it together. So why should I follow anything that you say? And you'll be surprised that argument still exists today.
No
It's
kidding.
like, Jothi, we're your parents, you got to listen to us. I'm like, well, don't think so.
No
Because I'm a parent
kidding.
myself, and I will follow what I feel is right to follow. It could be right, could be wrong, but I will take the responsibility for making my own decisions.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think the only tradition that I really probably kept with was just um, kind of staying positive and optimistic. Because I could see my dad was trying his best to be positive even in a non-positive environment. And we both would listen to spiritual teachings together, like Wayne Dyer.
Yes.
Yeah, like we had cassette tapes of Wayne Dyer's. Listen
Yes.
to in the car at the bus stop, and I think that's what kept me going throughout my childhood. I'm like, okay, stay positive. Like there is a light at the end of the tunnel, even though it's several years out. And that's actually what why no one really believed me, because they're like, what, like you're living through that, but then you seem so happy and optimistic all the time. I'm like, well, maybe because I have to be, because
Yeah.
otherwise I'm just going to be sad and depressed and
Yeah.
have thoughts that aren't really healthy. But in turn, I think what I realized recently actually was, you know um, I kind of never allowed myself to really feel the emotions and really process them so that I can release all of that baggage.
Got it.
So I feel like I'm currently even going through that myself, because it's like, every time I meet my parents and I get triggered by something, I'm like,
Yeah.
why do I feel keep getting triggered if I've emotionally detached, and I'm not letting them affect me, because it is affecting me.
Yep.
So this is where I feel like, okay, I need to do like another up leveling and healing, and really allow myself to process
Yep.
all the abuse, all the traumas, all the betrayals, all lack of trust. Because if you think about it, it's like, if you were abused in your childhood, that those are your key stages in life
Yep.
where you're supposed to have been cared for, loved, protected, by people that you feel like you're that's like your first line of trust right there. And if
Yep.
that fell through, then it takes a lot for you to really understand, like, wow, like, and that's going to affect the rest of your relationships if you don't really allow yourself to like process those and heal and move on. And I mean, I had a friend recently call me out on that. It's like, you really haven't healed. And I'm like, no, 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 I have. Like, they don't affect me anymore. Like, well, why are you still talking about it then? Like, uh, hmm, yeah, why am I? Why? Because I would go to my parents' house, and
Yeah.
something would happen. I'm like, oh, I can't believe they would say this, and they're still like this. And they're like, well, why is it affecting you? That means like you really need to,
Yeah.
really process this. I'm like, wow, you might be right.
Wow. Yeah. 100%. 100%. But I do believe what you're saying, that it is a process, and, where we are now in our healing process is going to be different than where we are in 5 years. And that's an important thing to let people know, that, you might not be as far along as we are, but, we're also not as far along as we'd want to be. So it's a continuous thing, you
Yeah,
know?
and I think one thing that I actually recently realized is, when you've been abused for so long, especially during childhood, and you really haven't released all that trauma, you tend to, it's conditioned you in a certain way. It's conditioned you to be abused, accept the abuse, and just to kind of keep the peace by being nice to the abusers, and with a ray of hope that, oh, they might change. Oh, like they're gonna change one day. Oh, they're gonna grow up, and kind of making excuses for them, and really putting all of your own needs and desires and wants to the side, because you're so busy trying to conform to them so that you don't keep getting abused. And it's almost like you're being nice to them. And I'm not saying you have to be mean to them, but at some point you have to stand up for yourself. And I think
Yeah.
a day is gonna come where you've had enough, and you're just gonna go scorched earth.
Yes.
Not that I've done that. I'm just kidding. And at some point you kind of have to do that and
Yeah.
really tell them how you feel. And I recently actually just did that. Because at some point it's you're building all of this, within you, and if you haven't really had the courage to step up and really tell them how you feel, and then leave so they can process all this, and release it and heal on your own, then you're just kind of bottling up all of this resentment and anger and frustration and hurt and pain within you, and keep trying to be nice to them, but they're sitting there, throwing like missiles at you, and you're,
Yeah.
keep showing them mangoes, like, hey, you want to take the mangoes? So I would urge just all women, and it's hard. It's extremely hard because especially if it's gone on for so long, it's hard to kind of pinpoint. Oh, I'm being abused. Physical abuse is very easy to catch because you're being physically hurt.
Yeah.
The mental, psychological, emotional abuse is hard to uh, identify and comprehend. And sometimes it does take another person to really call you out on that. Like, you're being emotionally and psychologically abused, right? And it's like, what? No, no, no. I mean, because you feel like you have a lot of pride in, oh, I wouldn't fall for that. Like, well, you have been.
Yeah.
you know, um,
Definitely.
and
Well,
I
and
had,
also when it's our parents, we know that our parents like physically took care of us. They fed us, they housed us. If you have an education, helped with that, sports, help. So it's hard to turn around and be like, you did all this great stuff. However, in this one part, you did really, really bad. It seems kind of like a slap in the face, or at least for me. I'm not trying to project that on you, but for me, that's what it feels like.
and also I think we're making. I mean, okay, so they had kids, and I know even to this day, those examples are exactly the examples my parents would use. Hey, we fed you, you had food on the table, you had a house, and
Yeah.
we took great care of you. I'm like, those are basic needs that every parent should be, taking care of for their children. Because otherwise, why did you have children?
Yep.
So you don't deserve like a gold medal for doing that.
Yep.
But along with that came all the other abuse. So it's not that you provided all of these things with a genuine heart and didn't expect anything in return. What you expected in return was conformity, and hey, if you don't do these things, oh, you're gonna pay for it.
Absolutely.
And you
It's a good way to put it. Thank you.
right. And as a parent, and what I got all the time was like, oh, you'll understand when you're a parent. I'm like, so I am a parent. I have 3 kids. I'm like, yeah, I do understand how not to be.
Yeah, same.
Right. Like
Yep.
these are basic needs that I'm providing for my kids. Now there are like, you know, I teach this to my kids all the time. Like, okay, you do need to be grateful for what you do have. And yes, I could be a basic parent and only provide like basic needs. I could do that, but I'm not. But you also have to be grateful for all these other things. You're living a very privileged lifestyle. You have a beautiful house. You get all of these toys and gadgets, and going out to restaurants. It's not like you're just having PB&J every day, or scraps. So part of it, but also it's the act of showing love and meeting the 6 basic needs of every human being. And I don't think our parents' generation, I mean, at least mine, didn't get that concept. I think they're like, okay, well, she has food, she has a house, and she has us as parents because she could be living without parents. And I think that was, they set the bar like so low for themselves.
Hey, I love that you're talking about the 6 basic needs. Can you tell us what those are?
So Tony Robbins came up with this. He calls it the 6 basic needs, and a lot of people have kind of changed or morphed that into different things. But he talks about, if I can remember, so love, unconditional love, is a basic need. It's unconditional. It's not you conform to me and therefore I love you, or I'm abusing you because I love you. It's like, no, like I will love you as a parent, as a mom, as a father, regardless of what you do or say
Yeah.
or how you act. And that's a need. It's not a want. So these are actual needs. And then I think there's certainty, there's uncertainty,
Mhm.
and those are also needs. So was it love, unconditional love, certainty, uncertainty, growth is an actual need.
Yes.
And that's actually spiritual. Some of these are from a physical level, and some of them are really in tune to like your spiritual needs. And
Yeah.
everyone kind of has a need for growth. And then there's two other ones.
Is growth with contribution, or is contribution?
Contribution was actually another one.
Okay.
Yes. So everyone kind of has a need to kind of give back to
Yeah.
others. Some people might not really realize it's an actual need, which is why you feel great when you give to others, whether you're giving advice or whether you're giving some, monetarily, or you're offering your time to help out. So it is an actual need. Yeah, contribution. And then there's one other one. I'll have to look that up. But and then what they say is
I found it. So it's certainty, variety, which is uncertainty.
uncertainty. Yeah.
Right. Significance.
Significance. Yes. Yeah. That's
love and connection, growth and contribution.
And for people that have significance, because there's actual a quiz you can take to kind of see like which of these needs are kind of like what you hold highest.
Yeah.
And if significance is one of them, he actually advises you to change that because that's what turns into like narcissism, like NPD and all that kind of stuff, because you kind of have this need like, oh, I am more significant than you, but that's not really the true need.
Yeah.
The true need is like everyone has a need to feel significant in their lives.
Yeah.
But if you're seeking that validation of significance from an outside source, then that's what turns like unhealthy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What's so funny is I actually went to Tony Robbins for the first time with my ex, who's a narcissist. And when we did that test, he came out as significance and certainty as the top two. And then Tony Robbins, within like a minute or so, said, oh, blah, 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 good for you, do the thing, blah, blah, blah. By the way, if your top two are significance and certainty, you better work on that. And those were literally his like number, like so high. And I literally was just like, it's another sign. At that point, I didn't know what was happening to me, but it was another thing in my brain where I was like, I'm not fucking crazy.
Yeah.
This is like an issue with these type of people.
Yeah. And I think, so I used to think like, okay, well, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm going to get out of it. And I did that. And even any abusive relationships, even if it's emotionally abusive, like, okay, I'm going to get out of it, so I'm standing up for myself. But then recently I realized, well, maybe I've just been running from it. And I feel like I have healed, but I keep attracting people that keep doing it to me. So maybe I haven't healed fully.
Yeah.
And so I'm exploring things like my friend actually just told me about, there's something called quantum healing hypnosis technique that's out there.
Yes.
And I'm going to try that pretty soon.
Nice.